Okay, welcome everybody to this session on compliance benchmarks. We've got three speakers for you this afternoon. In a moment we're welcoming Milind, Jan and Henk to the stage to talk to you about compliance benchmarks and how you can turn complex scripts into simple clicks. I'm glad I got that out without stumbling it. Just as a reminder, there is time at the end of this session for questions and answers. I will run around the room if you put your hand up so we can take some questions from the audience. So think about that as the session goes on, because we'd love to get your questions and feedback as we go. So to kick things off, I'll welcome Milind to the stage.
Thanks, Ian. Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good JNUC so far. Let's skip ahead and get started with our presentation. I've got the boring part of talking about compliance at the beginning, why compliance. I'll try to go through that pretty quickly so we can go on to the more fun stuff with Henk, who's going to be talking to you guys about his real-world experience with using compliance benchmarks and a few other kind of security bits. And Jan as well, who will talk to us a little bit about how we build this and what the future roadmap is going to look like. So yeah, like I said, why does compliance matter, how we achieve compliance, and then sort of what's next in terms of Jamf Pro and compliance benchmarks specifically. So starting with, why implement baselines and benchmarks at all? Skip one more. Perfect. Why implement them at all, right? A lot of you might be in regulated industries and you just have to do it. There is a specific standard that you might have to adhere to, like NIST, CMMC, or some other. But for many other organizations as well, even small to medium businesses, it's important because they ultimately help you to have a secure baseline for all of your Macs or iPhones or other devices. They help you to create a standardized set and ensure that your devices are hardened so that, no opportunistic threat actors are going to be able to leverage, the open windows, for example, or the open doors that you have within your particular fleet. So even if an organization isn't required legally to adhere to a specific framework or a specific benchmark, it is often very helpful for you to be thinking about this and thinking about what your specific organization needs, what your potential sort of risks are, and what you're trying to accomplish as an organization, either the IT team or the security teams in sort of what they require. But one size doesn't fit all. Like I mentioned, you really should, even if there is a specific benchmark like CIS or NIST, it is really helpful for you to understand how it applies to your organization, how your users are wanting to use those devices, and how you need to tailor the controls within these benchmarks in order to suit your organization and ultimately sort of make sure that we enable users to be productive. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? It doesn't matter if you have a super secure Mac or iPhone if users can't be productive with them. We also need to consider just different categories within the same organization. So for example, if you have a device in the HR department, you might want to make sure that maybe the screensaver timeout is, let's say, 5 minutes or 20 minutes. But if you have a device that's on a kiosk somewhere, of course you can't have a screensaver on it because people are actively going to be using it all the time. So the best way to kind of think about compliance or the consequences of non-compliance is just, what would happen if we didn't do this? Some of this is, again, pretty kind of rudimentary, but your usual sort of data leaks and leakages, right? Some of these controls will help you to harden your Macs or your other devices to ensure that, again, opportunistic threat actors can't leverage these in order to steal your data. Often, if you are in a regulated industry or in working with government contractors or in any other situation where you're legally required to comply to a specific standard, there could be monetary loss in terms of fines if you don't sort of follow this particular process. Of course, loss of reputation is another one, because we often know that when companies get breached, that results in a lot of PR and media attention, which ultimately results in loss of reputation, meaning that it's also going to affect your customer base, right? Customers might lose faith in your particular organization and seek alternate routes. So in terms of benefits, it's really the exact opposite, right? So if we do think about compliance and how to build a better, more hardened fleet, it's the exact opposite. Protecting your company's reputation, making sure that we're hardened against both the opportunistic threat actors as well as where threat actors may specifically look to target us. Mitigating security risks to make sure that if users are carrying out certain actions, that those actions won't lead to increase of risk because maybe they are installing something they shouldn't be, or they are configuring things in a certain way that leaves the door open to compromise. For example, just leaving their Macs unlocked forever, leaving it aside and walking away. Sometimes it's also about operational efficiency. Some of these standards also guide you towards implementing the right data sort of management, data processing practices, which means that once you start implementing them, that you can be a bit more refined in your process, and you can be a bit more operationally efficient as well, because effectively you're being given a blueprint based off of learnings from various other organizations in history and the experts themselves on how you should be carrying out your operations. There's one part that often kind of trips us up, and even sort of internally sometimes we go back and forth between talking about baselines and benchmarks. So what's the difference? A security baseline is effectively just a group of controls, right, that organizations want to configure on their devices. So once these controls are in place, we need to obviously continuously verify that the control is as we've set it initially, and it's not changed. When we have a compliance scoring system that assesses these controls from a given baseline, that is called a benchmark. So sometimes that is sort of used interchangeably, but roughly those are the two different ways that you should use benchmark versus baseline. Example of some of the controls might be that maybe all of our Macs need to have the firewall enabled, and all of our Macs need to have the AirDrop disabled. Again, sounds simple enough, but it can be a lot of work, especially for IT admins managing hundreds, if not thousands, of different devices. And some of the examples we come across from customers like yourselves are when, yes, let's block AirDrop for all devices, but then, the CEO or someone important kind of comes along and says, no, I really need to use AirDrop. And, they effectively, don't give you a choice. So you do need to start creating those exceptions to say, okay, certain users will need to be able to use AirDrop. So how did we sort of effectively get here? There's been a long history of macOS compliance in the industry, including at Jamf as well. As we can see from 2009, when the first benchmark was released, through to 2021, the introduction of the macOS Security Compliance Project, which effectively just streamlined and accelerated a lot of our efforts in getting Macs to be compliant. In 2022, we did enhancements to Jamf Protect in order to give you visibility into what's happening with these specific controls, specifically CIS controls. In 2023, we released the compliance dashboard in Jamf Protect as well. Again, something that a lot of you found super valuable. But often, as we spoke about last year, what many of you fed back to us was, this is great. We have compliance reporting in Jamf Protect, which is great. I love the dashboard. We have the Jamf Compliance Editor, which was released in 2023. And it's a great way for you to have a friendly GUI to be able to leverage the macOS Security Compliance Project. But as we announced last year, and as you wanted, we built it directly into Jamf Pro. In 2025, I think it was June this year, that we fully made compliance benchmarks GA, ultimately meaning that what used to be a very lengthy effort, right? Before, there were manual spreadsheets that you had to kind of go through each different control and trying to figure out, how do I audit for this? How do I control it? And how do I, keep up to date when macOS versions update? Through to, at the mSCP project, which made it much easier for us to be able to do this. Finally, through to fully automated and built-in compliance benchmarks in Jamf Pro. I think a lot of you are already using them. We've recognized some familiar sort of faces here as well. But again, we started with CIS. The journey is long, sort of ahead of us. There's a lot we need to do. So what we wanted to do next is we'll bring on Henk. He'll talk about his experience so far in using compliance benchmarks. And then we'll bring on Jan as well, who can talk to us a little bit about what's currently happening sort of behind the scenes and what the future roadmap looks like. And then we'll have plenty of time as well to answer any of your questions. Henk?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Henk Gottfried. I work for the UMC Utrecht as a Mac admin. I'm one of the 3 Mac admins that are managing the Macs in the UMC. Been doing this now for 15 years, and it's going good. I would like to take you guys how it all started. We started with just using scripts and extension attributes to see how everything is working on our fleet. So like I mentioned, our macOS fleet, everyone can be an admin for 30 minutes, which will leverage them to be an admin and change our security controls when they need it. We needed a way to find out, hey, if the firewall is enabled, if the gatekeeper is enabled, and it takes a recon for the information to get back in, but with some heavy lifting, it's helping us. This was gonna be skipped. I'm gonna talk a little bit about how we do vulnerability management in the UMC. We started using Nexpose. Nexpose is an agent that you can install on your Mac, and it will report every 24 hours to see what the state of the Mac it is. We didn't find it really helpful because you had to wait 24 hours, and 24 hours is a lot of time. In 24 hours, many stuff can happen. So Jamf then introduced vulnerability management, where we then can see in real life what's happening in our fleet. The deployment of the Nexpose agent was that you have to script it, configure it, and you're getting a dashboard where you can see if Nexpose if some vulnerability got installed on a Mac, like Log4j, or if your Chrome browser are out of date. There was an agent that you can get on the Mac that came with an Apple Silicon one or maybe an Intel one, but the packaging of the agent was really a pain in the ass. So I was really happy to migrate to the new Jamf vulnerability management. We also need to make sure that we can hand over the configuration of our Macs to our CISO if it's needed, if there is an auditing going on. So we created a compliance benchmark where you can see the scoring that we had on our Mac, and if an audit is going on, we can just simplify handover or the PDF of our main setup of our macOS fleet. This is kind of the timeline that we started it. So we started with macOS 11. We use extension attributes, like I also mentioned, and we use extension attributes from Friendson, which was really helpful for us. And also we had the first boot script. With the first boot script, we then could configure that file vault should be enabled, the firewall should be enabled, and all kind of security stuff. Thank you.
right. Thank you, Hank. This was pretty complex introduction into what needed to be done before, basically. So now we have compliance benchmarks in Jamf Pro. And let me take a fast back into last JNUC in Nashville, where during the opening keynote, the audience gave a big applause when the compliance benchmarks in Jamf Pro were only introduced. The development teams in Brno were watching this live in our office, and we took it as a huge commitment. So from that time on, as we are adding the features, everything has been directly based on or proved or validated by your feedback. And you can see that feedback from mainly Jamf Nation coming in. So as last year, this was really a very basic workflow, how to implement a CIS benchmark using the Jamf Pro. Nothing else, basically. But today, after everything has been added, and you can see, basically, if you were in the commercial state of the union yesterday, Milind spoiled most of this. So we got the NIST baseline. We have macOS 26 support. We have the auditing documentation, exporting the compliance status. Most of these also available via APIs. So this means that right now, this JNUC, we can call this as a major workflows for macOS. This obviously doesn't mean we would stop here, because we have still a lot of feedback coming, what needs to be changed, but we might be expanding the focus to other areas than just macOS, and I'll get to a roadmap in a minute. Now what I'd like to do is really show you how the elevated workflows in Jamf Pro can be very simple. The first one is how to create a benchmark. Out of curiosity, who of you has already created a benchmark? Quite a few. Okay, so don't be afraid. This is how you do it. In the beginning, you can see even the newly added NIST baselines just before JNUC. So once you have SSO enabled, you go into the available baselines, and there's a simple wizard. So you put a description, you select whether you do monitor only or also enforcing of the benchmark, then you assign a smart group, obviously sometimes starting with a test group, then expanding to the full one. Rules, this is the core, so you either leave everything as it is or tailor out some rules, maybe adjust ODVs. And here you can see the entire set of Jamf Pro objects that's going to be generated for you. So it's all based on existing Jamf Pro objects, but fully automated. So now, as the benchmark is deploying, all the objects are being generated and scoped to that smart group. And as I said, you can even do it through API. Just today, I've been at the product booth at the Expo Hall, and I saw Terraform that was doing pretty much this. It created a benchmark that appeared here, and all the Jamf Pro objects got created. So very simple. You just create the benchmark, probably starting with the test group, probably starting in monitor only. So what's next? Next, you audit the compliance status of your fleet. For that, you open the existing benchmark, you go to the rule report, where you've probably seen the compliance score up there. For those of you using macOS Protect, that's the compliance score. For each rule, you see the list of devices or computers with fail, pass, or unknown status. You can also export the entire rule report into CSV, again, the same CSV you might know from macOS Protect, and you can export it via API as well to keep historical track. Last but not least, this is what you've seen yesterday as well, the auditing documentation. So this time, this is coming from mSCP, so if you've ever created guidance through either mSCP scripts directly, or should you've been using the compliance editor, these are the very same documents you can generate for each OS version. Right, so this is probably the core, the auditing, the workflow that you will be using regularly. What if you find that you need to adjust the benchmark for any reason? Then you go again and you can edit the benchmark, pretty much everything except for the benchmark name itself. So maybe you need to take out some rule or edit back. Maybe you want to change the smart group for assignment, probably because of a gradual rollout. Then you can also adjust the description because you've changed something, so to keep a track. And you can switch between monitor only and monitor and enforce at any time. Once ready, this is saved but not deployed yet. Once you hit deploy, all the Jamf Pro objects start to be regenerated as needed. Again, fully automatically. You mostly don't need to care about those objects at all, but you can if you wish. So now we're deploying. You can see how it progresses, and yep, it's done. And should you need, you can delete the benchmark, and it does pretty much the same. It descopes all the objects from the assigned smart groups, and it eventually deletes the benchmark itself. As you've seen in the create workflow, we're still using extension attributes, as Hank mentioned. We're using, obviously, the configuration profiles and scripts delivered via policies, grouped into categories for better visibility, and last but not least, few more smart groups to deliver the proper objects to proper OS version, because mSCP is still structured per major OS version. This might be changing next year, and we're looking into that together with the mSCP authors to adjust the built-in capability accordingly. So this was the editing workflow, and now, as I promised, what's next? We do anticipate to shape this roadmap per your feedback, so it's not set in stone, but we need your feedback to keep coming. So anytime after this presentation, at the JNUC party, after the party, not really, but tomorrow I'm having a brain date at 10 a.m., so we'll be welcome to come. In a nutshell, what we are working right now, we do want to add all the mSCP baselines, meaning DISA STIG, meaning other NIST baselines, meaning CMMC, I believe, and others. Again, if you're using compliance editor, there's the full list. Scoping not just to smart groups, but also static groups, and allowing you to scope to multiple groups at the same time. If you're familiar with blueprints, that's what's happening in there. It sounds simple, not that simple in the background, but it's about giving you more flexibility in the configuration. And then any tweaks based on your feedback, mainly from Jamf Nation. As we move to the right, it's getting more and more, not blurry, but variable, let's say. So mSCP 2.0, that's the thing of merging the branches per OS version into one big, and for most of you, it should become just transparent. You don't need to worry about that. Change management logs. Oh yeah, that's something many of you have requested. Right now, if you go into the compliance section and do any edits, you see the change management logs telling you there's been Jamf Pro system doing something. We understand it's not ideal. You would like to see a name to not blame, but talk to. So we are looking into adding this. And obviously, enable renaming of the benchmark itself. We need to propagate it into all the object names, so that's why it's not there yet. Also, some of you might want to edit the benchmark via API, which is not possible today, but we're looking into adding this capability altogether. And what comes later, this is really like 2026 outlook. So who of you might need iOS support in compliance benchmarks? Yeah, some of you. So that's one thing. Maybe, or of course you've heard that MDM might not be here forever. So DDM, right now we're generating the configuration profiles via the standard MDM channels, but moving to DDM is something we will need to do anyway. So the question is not if, but when. And since this is a platform capability, therefore it requires admin Jamf SSO. So what you've seen in the UI, it's Jamf Pro, but the front end is delivered separately from Jamf Pro. That's how we are able to update the UI and the capabilities independently from the Jamf Pro releases, because it's a set of microservices in our platform. And that's where we do need SSO to for authenticate the platform and Jamf Pro and the various pieces. So that's what we're using it for. It's not just for the sake of doing it. But it's enabling us, as you might be familiar with Blueprint, again. So it's a platform service. It's in Jamf Pro. It's in Jamf School, very easily using the same set of microservices, the same micro front end. So this is really a brief look into what we're looking into, but we will be very happy to hear your feedback, your needs, what workflows you need to use, and what you need to improve, maybe what you're using today with Compliance Editor or mSCP and is not supported in compliance benchmarks yet. Anything, more than happy to hear that and discuss it. So, already summarizing, what's the workflow you are looking into? First, you need to make sure that you can create a report, check the current compliance status of your device fleet. Once you know where the security gaps are, use the tools we've shown today to deploy all settings that are needed to enforce the compliance. From there, what do? You constantly monitor your fleet to see if compliance keeps in place. And second, if needed, make sure you have the automated remediated processes implemented. And time to time, maybe quarterly, maybe when there's a new OS version released, you need to review the settings and adjust as needed through the editing workflows. Tahoe was a big change, and during the State of the Union, you've seen that as with any OS version update or mSCP update, which probably means that CIS or NIST have updated their baselines, you go into the UI, you see what changed in terms of the rules, you deploy, and everything is taken care of. So that brings us to the end. Thank you, Hank, for going through your story, and maybe you would have questions to us or to Hank, something specific, what you'd like to learn before you jump into implementing compliance benchmarks, or maybe something you would like to have known before you started and you would like to share with the others. So thank you. Time to questions.
There we go.
Yeah, microphone on the way.
So with the new blueprint stuff, is there any plan to have the benchmark implement a blueprint instead of a script or a profile, if appropriate?
And would you like a blueprint to be a compliance benchmark or a benchmark using a blueprint, or, yeah?
Exactly. I
Yeah.
just kind of, because it seems like if you go switch some things over to blueprint and then you apply the CS benchmark over the top of it, is there going to be a conflict?
Yeah, you're totally right, and we're looking into that, and it's a matter of which way you start. So I would be really keen to hear from you or anybody else, what would you expect as the workflow, whether you start with compliance or whether you would like to have everything in blueprints and maybe use compliance for reporting only. So yeah, definitely looking into that, not just for the sake of having it integrated with blueprints, but as I said, the future switch to DDM, possible iOS support, possible integration with Jamf School. Yeah.
Just to double down on that a little bit, we are definitely adding DDM support, right? And that is done by blueprints in Jamf Pro today. So what we're really talking about now is the UX side of things, right? You know, where does the workflow begin? Where does the workflow end? We've already started speaking to a few different customers and admins like yourselves, maybe some of you are here, on a few different options of maybe how we do that and what option sort of works the best. So if any of you do want to contribute and provide input into some of our prototypes that we can create for you and get your feedback on, let us know. Join us on the Brain Day tomorrow, or contact one of us directly and we can get that sorted.
there's a question.
Yep.
So we have the compliance reporting dashboards available as part of the Jamf Protect. But from last year, we have this inbuilt, within Jamf Pro. So would this still be a separate dashboard that we have to look into Jamf Protect, or would this be consolidated as part of the Jamf Pro so that we would have a single pane of glass, looking at the reporting side and everything consolidated within Jamf Pro?
So eventually the plan is to have everything in Jamf Pro. That's the short answer. And we're slowly getting there. As you've seen, for example, adding of the compliance score or exporting to CSV, that's to bring the Jamf Pro compliance reporting to the same level as Protect does today. So very happy to hear whether there's anything specific in Jamf Protect that you're probably using daily or regularly, which you still miss in Jamf Pro, so that eventually you can only use Jamf Pro, because on top of the reporting you have in Protect, you also have the enforcing piece. So that's the value added.
So as of now, this is separate. You mean to say in future this will be all consolidated into Jamf Pro?
Well, even today, the reporting in Jamf Pro is doing like 90+% of what Protect does. So maybe you could already switch to Jamf Pro reporting.
Yeah, I mean the reporting with respect to the CIS benchmarks, that is specifically, which is there in the Jamf Protect. I don't see it right now in Jamf Pro.
I think it's, a couple of the specific widgets that you have in the Jamf Protect compliance dashboard. Yes, the short answer is everything will be consolidated into Jamf Pro's compliance benchmarks. The slightly long answer is that we built these separately because it was the best way for us to build it at the time. Now with some of the modern architecture that we're building, like that Jan described, and with feedback from yourself, you don't want to be configuring in one place and you don't want reporting in a separate place and having to jump back and forth. We want to consolidate everything into Jamf Pro. Like Jan said, we're about 90% of the way there, so all of the individual rule reporting is in Jamf Pro, but I think you might be referring to some of the specific high-level overview widgets, which are in the dashboard in Protect today, which we will bring over. But again, part of that is, as you can see, that there's a lot on the roadmap. Part of it is also understanding from you what's most important for us to focus on. Is it taking those widgets and bringing them into Pro? Is it mobile support? Is it quicker DDM support? Is it better exception handling in terms of unique edge cases that you might have, like I mentioned earlier? You want to block airdrop for everyone, but then you have certain departments and your CEO coming along and saying, hey, no, I still want to use airdrop for kind of these reasons. So lots to do on the roadmap. Short answer again, we want to fully consolidate into Jamf Pro, but the priorities and the timelines will depend on what you tell us.
Just one more question. Other than CIS benchmarking, are there other industry benchmarks also that's been incorporated, or do you have plans to incorporate that as well?
Yeah, that was the first point of what we're working on now. So CIS benchmarks and the NIST baselines, are there, and we're working into DISA STIG and CNNS, CMMC, and I might have forgotten anything. Basically, if you look into the macOS security compliance project, the GitHub one, there's a list of baselines that are supported, 13 of them, and eventually we'd like to support all of them.
Yeah, like there are some regulations very specific to various industries, like for the healthcare, you have the HIPAA, so do you also plan to have this customized to different industries? Because we have our customers globally catering to different industries.
Yeah, so we've actually been discussing with Hank as well, because healthcare. Eventually, we might be looking into this. Still, the very preferred way is to expand the open source GitHub project, mSCP, because it's more easier to first maintain it by the community and then integrate it into the built-in capability. But again, it's I'd like to hear more if this is some standard that's already in place being used by multiple customers, or if it's really about high level of customization of the existing rules, because that's kind of difference.
Sorry? Yeah, so basically high-level customization specific to different industries, just like what I mentioned, right? Like for healthcare industry, there's this HIPAA, you know, which is very specific to that particular industry. So that's what I was referring to.
Yep.
Maybe I can expand a little bit. So first of all, we want to support all of the mSCP benchmarks, or all of the mSCP baselines. That's what the teams are currently working on now. Secondly, I think we're exploring the ability to create a custom benchmark so that you can pick and choose your own different sort of controls that you want to create as part of your own organization's benchmark. Thirdly, I think where you're sort of going with this is where you do have those industry-specific or region-specific baselines or standards, like we've heard about, you know, some from Australia, some from Europe, etc. The tricky part is it needs to be done in partnership with the bodies themselves that define them. And the great thing that, you know, all of the authors of the mSCP project have done is create this great resource for us to be able to kind of use as a jumping off point. And many of them are involved, you know, in some of those bodies. We have a great colleague here at Jamf called Alan, who helps us sort of contribute to the project as well. But it works because the community is behind it, and it works because the bodies are clearly defining sort of what needs to happen. You don't get that consistently across the board in different regions and different industries. So the best way for us to do this is, you know, ideally, if we know that there's a lot of demand for a specific one like HIPAA or Cyber Essentials in the UK or Essential 8 in Australia, then for us to engage with those bodies directly and figure out, you know, how do we not just build it once, but maintain it sort of in the future, because that often is a part of the biggest challenge. For example, one of these benchmarks that I looked into, there was an update from maybe 10 years ago, and then there was no update since. Right? So how do we make sure that not only, you know, we build something that will help today, but you can rely on for like the foreseeable future as well?
Thank you.
Thank you. Still have time for more questions? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Throw your hand up.
Behind you.
Hey, this is more of a feature request, I guess, but would it be possible to basically make it where you can create the benchmark and then you could hide all of the Jamf Pro objects it makes? Because, you know, in our environment, we're testing it currently, and we have multiple benchmarks, and they're showing up in our environment. We don't really need to see them. You know, we have to sift through those to get to what we actually want. So maybe like, you know, like a little toggle, just hide all objects for this benchmark.
Yeah, I understand that. You're not the first one probably, so it's on our list, not yet on that roadmap. We're more really looking into how we could integrate with blueprints, as we've talked about a few minutes ago, because then we would not be creating directly these Jamf Pro objects, so we would not see them. It would be done via blueprints. So we're more looking into that one, honestly, than to any either hiding. Some people mentioned doing it read-only, or any tamper-proof in general.
Okay, thanks.
Before we built it, we actually considered, you know, do you make it read-only or some other way to kind of tamper-proof? Do you hide it completely? A lot of the early feedback from the kind of beta stages was that as admins, you want visibility and you want the sort of control. Even if it's automated, you want to be able to see what's happening, and you want to be able to kind of change it if it's sort of happening. So we went with the easy sort of first release, which is, you know, showing you everything and giving you the ability to change any of those underlying objects as well. It's not recommended, but you could still sort of do it. But I think that's a great idea, at least in terms of the toggle to hide it. Yeah, we can kind of look into it and see where it weighs up.
With the release of reports, they work great, but with the security compliance project, you can customize the title, logo, and authors. Is that something on the roadmap for templating in the future?
Not yet, but if a lot of you need that, I believe you do, so keep that feedback coming, and the roadmap will become adjusted. So to give you some more insights, we're trying to be as iterative as possible. So instead of building the entire reporting with the capability of being customizable in place, we would not have the auditing documentation today. So we rather do it, let's put it in there, non-customizable, and let's hear the feedback. And if you need customization, okay, we'll add it.
Actually, since we're at JNUC, this is a perfect maybe way to ask. Out of everyone here, who needs to be able to customize or edit any of these kind of rule names or logos or anything? Okay, a lot of people.
No, take it. Yeah.
All right.
Got time for a couple more questions, if we got any. Yeah.
One of the really cool features of the macOS Security Compliance Project is the ability to grab all of that like customized documentation at the end for auditing purposes and just general like review. I haven't had a chance to play around yet, but is that something that's like in the Jamf compliance section or maybe coming down the pipeline?
Just to make it clear, you mean the documentation for auditing, meaning the configuration of the benchmark?
Yeah, in the macOS Security Compliance Project, when you go through and you build your project and you choose everything and you set the values, once you're all finished, it can generate like a PDF that will go through. And
that's the one that's been shown. If you go to the configuration, look at the rules, there's the get auditing documentation, there's the exact PDF, HTML, ADOC, and XLS.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Check it out.
Okay, maybe one more? Or are we done? Okay. Good stuff. Please give a nice round of applause to our excellent presenters. Thank you so much.